Now, go. No, before the dance, before the class starts. Come on, go.
All right, if you remember yesterday, the Rebbe explains on how we can fix our personality, our character. And from that, we can fix the whole world, because that's the reason the Jews are here in the world, is in order to fix up the world, to make the world holy. Oh, that's beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. In order to fix up the world, to make the world a holy place. So first of all, you have to start with yourself. That's one of the things you have to, is fix up yourself. How do you fix up yourself? So now we're going to see. You have to think about God. You have to get excited about God. You have to love God. You have to be in awe of God. In order to do this, it has to be real. God has to be real. If God is just some biblical character, how can you going to love? What's there to love? You have to really have a love and appreciation of God. And the Rebbe explained in the first paragraph, in general, how you do it, and now we're going to explain more in detail. In general, how you do it, every Jew is composed of 3 souls. 3 souls. And the Tanya, it only divides them up into 2. But the 3 souls are what's called the natural soul, the intellectual soul, and the godly soul. The natural soul, that's a natural person. He wants to eat, he wants to sleep, the pain and pleasure principle. He wants what's best for him, he avoids what's bad for him, he wants security, he doesn't want any problems, he doesn't want any difficulties. That's pretty much the goal of all the psychiatric methods that there are today, right? The different, take away a person's problems so that he's, how do you want to say it? As much as on a plane of what they call homeostasis as possible. No problem is just to take it. That's what the natural soul wants. The natural, or here it's called the animal soul. That's our natural self. Then there's what we call the intellectual soul. That's the thinking man. That's really the top part of the animal soul. Thinking man, he's thinking what really is right, what really is wrong, what I should do, what I shouldn't do, what's proper, what's not proper. He wants to understand everything as much as possible. Wants to understand life. Usually, the intellectual soul is used to acquire what the animal soul, natural soul, what it wants. You want money. You can't have money if you're not smart. You got to go to college. You have to at least learn how to be. You want power. You have to use your mind. You have to outsmart people. You want success. You have to go to school, learn how to be an actor, whatever. You have to practice. You have to do something. Right? You want pleasure. Your mind will tell you where to go, how to do it, how to dress, how to do it. So the mind can become what's called the intellectual soul, if you want to call it. It's actually the intellectual part of your natural soul can become enslaved by your natural soul. It just tells you how to get what you want. That's what the whole world is, right? How to get what you want. There's all these hundreds of coaching things, right? How to how to win friends, influence people, etc. It's all for me. Another word for the animal soul is me. I want, I think. Most natural, healthy thing in the world. It's not some sort of a weird animal. It's a human animal. Then we have the intellectual soul. The intellectual. Then, by a Jew, there's a thing called the godly soul. What's this godly soul? The godly soul knows the real truth. The real truth. It's called emet lamito, real truth. The animal soul also knows the truth. If you eat a cake, you're hungry, you eat a cake, it's cold, it feels good. That's true. You have a lot of money in your bank, right? You look in your bank. Yesterday you had about 2 with 5 zeros after it. Now today you're looking, it says 6 zeros. Oh, happy. Yeah. Today you said 4 zeros. Oh, you're terrible, right? That's the truth. If you have more money in the bank, you feel good. That's true. But it's not real, absolute truth. The godly soul, what is the godly soul? The godly soul wants to know, why is everything here? What's the purpose for everything? So in other words, the animal soul doesn't ask questions. It's just mostly feelings. The intellectual soul, he wants to understand everything. He wants to understand everything. How I can use it for myself, whatever. Understand it. How does a car work? How does this work? Understanding the world. The godly soul wants to understand, why is God creating this? What is this here for? What is a car for? What is a human being for? What am I for? What is time for? What is energy for? What is pleasure for? What is success for? Right? Success is not the goal. It's a means for what? For what? That's the godly soul. Why is God creating everything? To feel the great. And especially, why is God creating me? So the godly soul gives these, it's like a person who's blind, in 1 second he sees. All of a sudden he sees. 1 second. Turn on the lights for 1 second. No, all of a sudden he starts thinking, well, I have to reorient myself. The godly soul sees the truth. It sees the fact that God is really creating everything. So God is really good. God really enlivens everything. God is infinitely close to us. He creates us. The godly soul sees this, but it sees it only for seconds. Maybe. By tzaddikim, it's all the time. It depends on what levels of different tzaddikim. Okay, so that's generally, now we understand how the players, we understand the rules of the game. There's the natural soul, which is really us. We have an intellectual soul, and then we have our godly soul that sees Hashem. How are we going to make this thing work so that we start to really love God and we have less attachment and love for the world? The world becomes a means to the end of serving God instead of the world becoming an end in itself. And you can use any means you want to get it. World. Base. What do you have to do? You have to start contemplating. We don't feel God, but the Rebbes do, and we believe what the Rebbes say, and we also have an inkling that maybe really is true. I mean, just take an example. Here we have the Jewish people. How do they still exist? What's keeping them going? Right, 2,000 years we haven't had a country, we didn't have an army, we didn't have nothing with it, and the Jewish people still, and they've been killing us and destroying us and raping us and this because we've been religious Jews, and they just keep holding on to their Judaism, and we still exist. All the people that have tortured us and killed us and tried to destroy us, they're all gone. And we're still, how? I was thinking, wow, there's something going on over here. Just what is going on? Why are Jewish people still here? A person starts to think, what's going on, right? Or some people can look at a sunset, what is the sun? Where does beauty come from? What's going on? Maybe a person starts, that's called, you start to contemplate. You sort of remove yourself a little bit from your usual way of thinking, and you start to think about the world. Your questions come in your mind. What is going on here? Why is everything here? That's the godly soul. Why is everything here? Why am I here? Why do the Jews still exist? Why? It's not like meditation. Meditation means you cut out the world. Meditation means you cut out the world. You think about one little thing. Contemplation means you have a big question about the world. You have a big question about the world, or about the creator of the world. Right? That's contemplating? What is really going to make it real? That's what hitbonanut means, to contemplate. This main thing of contemplating God to the point where you start to love God, you appreciate God, the reality of God. Where is the main play? Kriya Shema. Pasuk Rishon, the Kriya Shema, the first sentence of Kriya Shema. Shema Yisrael. Think about it. Shema means Havana. Hear, O Israel. What does it mean hear? Hear, we're yelling to all the Jews. What does it mean hear, O Israel? Hear means listen, think. Do you hear what I'm saying? You hear? Right? I'm trying to tell you that, the vaccines are bad. Do you hear what I'm saying? You hear, what are you talking about? Listen, I got proof. I have proof. You hear? Start to meditate. God really exists. Yeah, okay, good. Are you hearing what I'm saying? I'm hearing, but I'm not listening. Hearing means now I hear what you're saying. Now I hear what you're hearing means to understand. Shema Yisrael means understand, and we'll see what Yisrael, but let's take for now, Yisrael means the godly soul. The godly soul, godly soul, listen. Or listen to the godly soul. Shema is language of understanding. Hainu haheskem mitzad seichel, namely the willingness, the agreement of the intellectual soul, she eino mishtaneh be'etzem mehuto, that the intellectual soul, your mind, doesn't really change in its essence being, it's still intellect. Mashu seichel anushi, namely that it is human intelligence. We're not asking you to go up in a mountain and stop thinking like a human being. It's natural human intelligence. But nevertheless, hinehu maskim, it will agree to the seichel, to the awareness of a nefesh elokis that the godly soul presents it. And what are we thinking about? We're thinking about, somebody's making noise there. Maybe if you could turn off your microphone. Right?
It's Bruce. Ask Bruce if he could turn it down. Maybe he'll listen to you.
You're a host. You can just do it for him. Go to participants and mute him. I think he fell asleep.
Okay, I don't see the picture. Okay, no problem. I'll fall asleep. Okay, that's all right. All right. It's late over there. Sure, I don't blame him. Okay, so what happens? Shema means understand. We're trying to tell our intellectual soul, which is the top part of our animal soul, in other words, our natural self, think about it. Think a sentence. Just think. Take a second and just think. Think. How are you here? Who are you? What's going on? How do you exist? What is existence? What am I supposed to think about? I'm here. Here I am. What's the question? This is no. In the word Shema itself, it's indicating what you should think about, what you should contemplate about. Now, thinking is different than contemplating. Thinking means, what do we call it? In an idea. An idea, you're not involved. It's not personal. It's impersonal, right? Like we say that the marriage counselor who goes home and beats his wife. When he's a marriage counselor, he has all these ideas. He has all these. When he comes home, all of a sudden, hey, you burnt my scrambled egg. And he gets all angry. What happened? Thinking means you think. Contemplating, right? His wife says, maybe think about 1 second. You're giving all these people advice not to get mad. And look what you're doing. He starts to contemplating means it's relevant to me. It's relevant to me. It's the same thing with love and fear. You can only love and fear something that's really relevant and important to you personally. It can't be just a religious idea that you do because everybody's religious. It has to be something that you really feel. You see it, you have a check, and the check is for $1 million, but it's got somebody else's name on it. It's got your name on it. Oh, now you start to think, is it really a genuine check? Is it got cover? Is it? You start to get in. Now you start to think. That's contemplation. That's bonanut. But it's relevant to me. So same thing about God. You have to think about God that it's like a check that's got my name on it. God is really creating me right now. This is not just an idea. The Rebbe is, I'm being really, says, it's more real than you think. Just think about the letter Shema. Shin, Mem, Ayin. What's Shin, Mem? What's this? Listen. The Hine, Shema are the letters of Shem, Ayin. Shem, the name, Ayin, 70. The Ayin, and if you look in the Torah, you'll see that the Ayin is written with a big letter Ayin. Big letter Ayin. What's the letter Ayin? Now, in the Hebrew alphabet, each letter is a number. Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Dalet is 1, 2, 3, 4. You get up to Yud, it's 10. Chaf is 20. You get up to ayin, it's 70. That represents the number 70. And here we have a big ayin, a big letter ayin, which is number 70 big. What's this talking about? Hine. Heyos kol olamot, because all of the worlds and all the creations, whom bechinat shem, are just a name of God. Ukamaimer melech shemon nikra aleim, like it says, a God. God is the king of the world. Well, just his name is called on the world. So to speak, God creates the world from his name. What is the tool God uses to create this world all the time? And nevertheless, we don't see him at all. He conceals himself, but nevertheless, he reveals himself. He's creating the world. How does he do this? Because he's creating the world, so to speak, not from himself, even though it is himself, but it's himself through his name. Ukamo Shem HaMelech, like the name of a king. Shemitpashet ala Medina, that it spreads over the country. Kamo Kain, similarly, Malchutcha Malchut Kol Olamim. Just like God's kingship, his kingship is the kingship of all of the worlds. And there's when King Solomon wants something to get done, he doesn't have to come and do it. He doesn't have to come and say, we're going to build a road over here. Right? He sends his men and they come with a proclamation. In the name of King Solomon, we are building a road here. All of the houses have to move. In the name of King Solomon, everybody moves. But King Solomon's not there. It's just his pages there. Right? But nevertheless, everybody knows that's his power. That's him personally saying to do the same thing. The world. The world is being created by Hashem himself. But Hashem is doing it through his name. Through his name. That's the tool that God uses to create the world and simultaneously to conceal himself. It's just a tool. It's not, so to speak, God's self. Even though all there is God. There's nothing except for God. But this is the means by which he does it. Sort of like the same thing like a person. Same thing like a person, a human being. A person, he picks up something, right? I pick something up with my hand. So is it my hand picking it up or is it me picking it up? Obviously, it's me. So if it's you, then you don't need your hand. I need my hand. My hand is part of me. It's my hand. The same thing, God's name, it's God. But on the other hand, it's only God's name, right? My hand is very similar to everybody else's hand. But same thing, God's name is similar to any other creation, so to speak. That's what it seems to be, but it's not. It's God's name. And God's name is creating the whole world. Like a king. A king doesn't do things, so to speak, on his own. He does it on his own, but he does it through his name. So we all say, Bruch Shem Kavod Malchut. Okay, so in other words, you look at this whole amazing world that we have, with the trees and the skies and the things, and even more, you read in the prayers, in the davening about the angels, this all just is coming from God's name. So to speak, the lowest aspect of God. Shemirat Malchuta, that's another, what is it? A synonym for God's name is God's kingship. Shemit Pashetet Ba'olamot, it spreads through the worlds, L'haveosam, to create them, L'hacheosam, and to enliven them. Hibechin Hashem Va'or Levad, all of what you see is just coming from the name of God, so to speak, a ray of godliness. God is so real and so amazingly real that to create the world, it can't do it from his essence. It would be too much. It would like putting a trillion watts into a small light bulb. So God has to dim it down, dim it down, dim it down. That's called God's name. What does it mean, Shem, Ayin? That's Shema. Shema is Shem. That's the name of God. Ayin. Ayin is 70. Ayin, Shehu Ha'ora Mibechin, is this, though the whole world is just a ray from Ayin, from this level of 70. Which is Zion Midos, the 7 emotions of God, the Kol, Echad, Kaluya, and each one is included from 7. She'ola Ayin. What does it mean, the 7 emotions of God? Okay, there's a terrible thing in the world which is called idolatry. In Judaism, it's one of the worst sins. It's in the 10 Commandments, right in the beginning. I am God that took you out of Egypt. Don't worship any other gods. Why do people worship idols? Why? Because they have needs, and they think that God is so far away that he can't provide for their needs. God is amorphous, he's up there. So Judaism comes and says, no. You got a good point. If that's what you really believe, that God is far away, then you got that's a good excuse for worshiping idols. But the fact of the matter is it's not so. God is not far away. God is very close and he has a personality. And God's personality actually is like our personality. And there, King David says, from my flesh, I can understand a little bit about God. It says in the beginning of the Bible that God created man in his image. And a bit later, it says that God does not have an image. And you can't say that God has an image. It's a forbidden thing to say that God has an image. But it said right in the beginning that we are in God's image. How do you translate that? So that's called the secret of faith, the secret of the 10 sfirot of God, the secret of God's personality. That's what's called Shem and Ayin. Ayin are the emotions of God, 7 emotions. Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferes. God has emotions. And this name, Shem, Ayin represents the 7 emotions of God, each one included from 10. Like we see in Sfirat Omer, right? Each one of the 7 emotions is contained from 7. We only have 7. But really, each one is contained from 10. So 7 emotions of God. Each one has 10. That represents the emotions of God. And the letter Ayin, that's Malchut. That's the lowest aspect of God coming from his emotions. It's below the emotions. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm making. What's his name? Bruce. Hello, Bruce. Who is it? Bruce? Is it Herschel? No. Bruce. Okay, that's all right. We'll deal with it. We'll deal with it. Sort of like Matan Torah. It sounds like there's thunders and lightning. Hainu, Hazayan, Midos, Kamosha, Kalulim, Bina. This is the 7 emotions as they are included in the level of Bina. Bina, that's the source of the emotions. Chesed, Chachma, Bina, and Dat, or Keter, Chachma, and Bina. Keter, Chachma, and Bina. And the 7 emotions as they are included in Bina, that's the big Ayin. The Sham in Bechinat Gdola, the emotions are big. So therefore it's the number 70. Each one there, when the emotions of God are included in his what we call God's Bina, God's understanding, which in a way is the Torah, then they are bigger. That's the number 70. But up there, when the emotions of God, the 7 emotions of God, when they are in their source, their number is bigger, 70, but this shows on unity. How does a bigger number show on unity? This is Kabbalistic. We're talking. Even though it's a bigger number, 7 is lower. And 70 is the 7 emotions, the 7 emotions of God as they are in their source. There they are 70. But nevertheless, even though it's a bigger number, they are nevertheless unified. That because why is it a bigger number? A bigger number shows on division, right? Says the Rebbe, no. There's a difference between what's called God's lights and God's vessels. And the higher the lights of God are, the more powerful they are, the bigger number they are. That shows on a higher level of unity, more powerful unity. That's a higher number. The vessels of God, the lower they come, the bigger the number is. So the difference between lights and vessels, the Rebbe is going to talk about it in a second. Lights, the higher they are is the bigger number. Vessels, the lower they are is the bigger number. We'll see. The kol shalamayla yoter, that all that the lights are higher of God is riboya or it's bigger light, umiyot kelim, and less vessels. Like it's written in another place, a bigger number is up, and sometimes the bigger number is below. The smaller number, the smaller and less powerful a thing is, the number becomes less and less. So sometimes a big number shows on a higher level, and sometimes a big number shows on a smaller level. The yechidot, asiriot, meot, alafim, v'ravavot, hari yechidot and penimius. We say the level of yechidot, smaller number. This is talking about keter, higher level. The kol shira, like we say, God is one. What does it mean? God is one. That's the highest level of God. That God is one, right? Ulamata yoter mitraba v'misra, and the more division there is, the more bigger the number becomes. But sometimes we see the opposite. That in Kabbalah, we see that the bigger the number shows the higher and more unified it is. Adarabba, mispar, maruba, bigger number, hulamayla is bigger. Now, what are we talking about this for? to explain why, what you're supposed to think about when you say Shema. Shem is just the name of God. Ayin is talking about the 7 emotions of God, how they are in their source. The Ravav was saying, Beketer, sometimes we see that the 10,000s are in Keter, higher level. Like it says, Asa miravavos kodesh. The pasuk, what is it? Hazino. Oh, Hainu hahefresh bein oros v'kelim, the difference between lights and vessels. The mispar oros, the number of lights, ulamayla yoter is higher. Mispar kelim, and the number of vessels is below, is lamata biyoter, is smaller. Okay, so why is it that in Kabbalah sometimes a big number shows on a very high level of unity, a very high level, and sometimes exactly the opposite. A bigger number shows on more diversity. It's more logical. I mean, 1,000. But sometimes no, thousands or 10,000, that shows on more unity. Why? The difference is the mispar kelim, the one we're talking about, the vessels, or mispar oros, and the number of lights, hagam mispar, they are now in a level of division. Let's see if I can turn this young man off here. It's possible to do this. Let me see. Manage participants. Here we are now on Bruce mute. Ah, there it is. I did it. Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to mute anybody, but what can we do? Okay. And that's what it means, that the number ayin, hein, amidos, akalolios, babina. That's what we mean. Shema is shame, and if you look in the Torah, the ayin is written big. That's the number 7, how it's included in its source, which is bina. What's the point of this thing? We're trying to think of here where the world is coming from. Where the world is coming from. Like I say, if you want to really come to love God, it has to be real. What's real? Me. Where am I coming from? How am I being created? How do I exist? How does the world here? What's going on? So first of all, you have to have faith that God is creating it. Okay, I have faith. It's not enough. It's a commandment to love God. Believing in God, that's the first of the 10 commandments. I am God that took you out of Egypt. That's faith, emunah. But the commandment is to love God. It has to be personal to us. The Jews believed in God. True, they believed in God. But when it came to something in the world, the golden calf, they went crazy. If a person really has love for God, it means he's personally attached. He really has personal love for Hashem. Love is a very, very amazing thing. Very amazing thing. A person who loves his children, he's willing to do anything for his children. Now, it's a very terrible thing in the world, abortion. And the people just love themselves so much that a child just disturbs them. But ideally, it used to be, and I think it still is, that mothers used to give their lives for their children. They used to give their lives for their children. I just heard a story 2 days ago. It was the Holocaust Day, so I couldn't avoid hearing these stories about the Holocaust. So there's a lady. She was telling her story. She went back to Auschwitz. She's talking about, and she said that her mother went into Auschwitz pregnant. She was pregnant. She was already in her, whatever it is, her 9th month or whatever. And amazingly, Mangala just sent her to the side where people lived. And it was really cold outside. And she gave birth. Amazingly, there was another lady there with her. And the lady was a doctor. And she found somehow the sheet to put her on. And she gave birth to a child. And she found a scissors somewhere, cut the umbilical cord. It took her to the child. This is the lady telling the story. She was the child. She was born very small, and she was very weak. She couldn't cry, that's what kept her alive. 2 hours after she was born, 2 hours, they told everyone, they hid it from everybody that she gave birth. Everyone had to go outside and stand in order, in whatever it is, to make a mizdar, to stand in line and be counted. And the woman who just gave birth, she also had to go out. It was freezing cold outside, and they had to go outside. Either they were naked, in case they didn't have any shoes, and they had very thin clothes, maybe like these sort of thin prison clothes. And they stood outside, and it was very. And they stood outside, and the lady was standing next to her, I guess, before the guard came, she saw the lady standing there. She said, how can you stand there? You just gave birth 2 hours ago. How can you stand in this cold and freezing weather? And she said, this lady said it was her. She heard from the one who asked her, the lady who had been the little baby. She had been left behind. They had to leave her behind. They wrapped her up and hoped she wouldn't make any noise. So the lady standing next to the mother asked her, how can you do it? How can you stand here in this cold and you just gave birth? She said, I have a baby. I have a baby. In other words, the love for a mother to her child was so great. Love is such an amazing thing that it overrides any physical considerations. Love. And this is what it's saying. A person should love God. God already loves us. We're his babies. He loves us. The question is, do we reciprocate? And that's the whole name of the game. We have to reciprocate. We have to realize how close God is, how good God is, how God is creating us, how he's keeping us alive, right? But this lady, the little baby, she could have been convinced afterwards, who kept you alive? This nursemaid, the one who gave birth in the middle, or maybe it's some German guard who brought her some food. It's possible she wouldn't think about her mother. She wouldn't realize who really gave birth to her, who really is her mother. She's the source of the whole thing. The same thing with us. We can think, oh, God creates me. This is very amazing. That's not the essence of God. That's a good thing to love. It is, but God is much, much more lovable than that. He's much more close. He's much more intimate. His connection is more intimate than that. That God creates you, that's what you see, what you feel. That's just God's name. And God's name, it comes from God's emotions. And his emotions, that comes from what's called Bina, how the emotions are when they're inside of their source. That's what's called the shame. Then there's the number 7, and then there's the big 7, 70. That's the ayin that represents God's in his source. So let's go back to our story. Not just the mother kept her alive, and the mother warmed her, the mother risked her life. The mother loves her. You feel the love, how deep this is. And then you can feel the essence of her mother herself, the connection. And that's the thing that you have to feel with Hashem. The essence, love of Hashem. Not just that God is keeping us alive. That's wonderful. That's good enough reason, right? He says, yeah, but it's much bigger than that. Think about God's emotions. That's even getting close to the essence of thinking about the source of God's emotions. Oh, that's the big ayin. That's how they are in Bina. Even though the number 80, 70. Hello? Nevertheless, they are completely one. Let's even go higher. The shore is the source of this big 7 ayin rabasi, the big number ayin, the 70, or shivas yamim. This is what's called in Kabbalah the light of the seven days of creation. This is above Bina. It's what's called the Zayin Tachtonim Shebaketer. This is called the 7 lower levels, the 7 emotions of what's called Keter. Now I'm talking, this is Kabbalistic, but what it already wants is that we should feel this a little bit, so that we can come to appreciate how infinite God is and how infinitely distant God is from us, but on the other hand, how infinitely close he is to us. He's creating us. But how great God is. Like it says, the Hoya Ora Lavana Ora Chama, like it says, the light of the moon will be the light of the sun, and the light of the sun will be the light of the 7 days of creation. The moon is lower, the sun is higher, and the light of the 7 days of creation, that's the original light, that's even higher than that. The Or Zayin Hayamim, that the light of the 7 days of creation, who Makor, this is the source of all of this level of the 7 days of the Elyonim, this what we call the Bina in Atzilus. This is the source of the 7 days, this what's called the light of the 7 days, that's Keter. That's the source of the lights of the 7 days of Atzilut, which Atzilut is the highest world. Keter is not a world, it's above that. She'ein Shivas Yamei Binyan, this is the 7 days of creation. And these are the 7 days, and they eventually come to the days of Malchut. But that's the name we said before. She'em, this is what the 10 utterances of God, that's also 7 yomim. That's also God spoke his 7 days, is 10 utterances. Let there be light, let there be a firmament. This is in the 7 days. So the whole number of 7 now, this ayin is hinting at us where we're coming from. What's our source? Don't think that you're alone, and don't think that you exist because you come from a monkey. Good, let's say you come from a monkey, but how do you exist right now? What's keeping you in existence? What's keeping you in existence right now? You want to say, come on, I'm a monkey, whatever, a tadpole, whatever you came from. Right now, where are you coming from? What's keeping you in existence right now? So that's what you have to think about. That's what we're thinking about. We're thinking about right now, what is keeping me right now in existence? How am I keeping alive? This, God's enlivening me. That's just God's name. What's the source of God's name? It says God's emotions. What's the source of God's emotions? What's the source of God's emotions? That says that's what's called the light of the 7 days. Keter. Just like there are what's called 7 firmaments. The Shoresh Kulam, that the source of all of them comes from the light of the 7 days of creation, the light which comes from the 7 original days of creation. You have to think about this for a second. There's this big argument about how old the world is. Some people think the world is 1 million years, 1 billion years, 12 trillion years. There's religious people, very religious people, say that the world is 10 trillion years old. Every day it says over there is really 1 million years, 1,000 years, 1,000. So the Rebbe says every day of creation is a day. It's 24-hour day. How could it possibly? But there's no possible way. What do you mean no possible way? How could God create the world so fast? So fast. 7 days. It takes millions of years to know how long it takes to make an atom. So the answer to that seems to me is very simple and it seems to be very obvious. That if we're really Jews and we believe that God created the world from nothing, so how much time does it take to make something from nothing? Before there was something, there was no time. So it doesn't take any time. As soon as God created whatever nothing is, we have no conception of what it means nothing, but no thing anyway. In other words, there was no vacuum, there was no black hole, there was no being, no spirit, no. God created everything from nothing. How long does that take? No. What do you think is harder, to create something from nothing, or to take something and make it into the world? An atom, whatever it is, a spirit, from a spirit to make the world, right? Well, to take one and to make it into 22 billion to the 22 billionth power, whatever it is, that's almost impossible. But to take nothing and make it into something, that's really impossible. So if God could do that, and he did it in no time, so he could have created the whole entire world in no time. So the question is, why did God schlep the whole thing out for 7 days? It's a tremendously long amount of time, 7 days. And you want to say that wasn't enough time. It should have been 20 billion years. It should have been this. What are you talking about? 7 days is a tremendously long amount of time. It doesn't make any sense why it took so long. It should have been instant. So the Rebbe said the reason is because to show us that God creates the world according to a system. And the system is also miracles upon miracles and miracles. And the lower it gets, the less miraculous it seems. But the higher that we can bring our minds to sort of conceive, the more miraculous everything becomes. And that's why we say that the shame, this whole world, just comes from the name of God. But where does that name come from? It comes from this little big letter ayin, the emotions of God, how they are in Atzilus. And that's also just not the end. There's a higher source than that. Well, in the future, Tia Malchut says in the future, what's going to be that this level of Malchut, the sun, the moon, will be like the light of the sun, or Zayin Ayomim, that the light of the 7 days, the original light of creation, will be here. Which you think, well, it's pretty amazing. How would it be? You think, what do you mean? What's amazing? God is here. There's nothing except for God. All these things are just concealing the truth, concealing the amazing miracle of what the world is. When a person thinks about that, now it's just the name of this letter ayin. It's just a name and a ray alone of godliness from the light of the 7 days of creation. The source of creation is just here. All we have is like the emotions that come from that, and a ray that comes from that, and a name that comes from that. That's what we say, Bruch, Shem, Kabod, Malchut, these are all these different. The Sham, there are called Achdut, Israel. But the higher you go, the more unified things become, so that we see the truth that God is really one. This whole world is just one big miracle. That's what it means when we say God is one. Echad. Echad is Aleph, is the oneness of God. Chet is talking about the seven heavens and the earth. Dalet is talking about the four directions. The Zion, Rekim, Ohr is that the seven heavens and the earth, the Dalet Ruchos and the four directions, Ha'olam of the world, are all batal to the Echad. They are completely unified to the oneness of God. So when you say Shema Yisrael, I mean, this might, reading this before you daven, I mean, I'm warning you. If you want to go somewhere quick in the morning, don't learn this Chassidus. Don't do it, because it'll wreck your whole day. You'll start thinking about, well, maybe God really exists. Maybe He's really creating me. Maybe He's creating that's just a low level of God. Maybe it's higher. You start to think and you start to read. You start to cry. You start to this and all. You miss your bus. You miss your train. You miss it. But Hashem takes care of everything. Don't worry. Hashem takes care of it. I can convince you. You can convince me. To convince your wife is a different story. But nevertheless, that's the fact. The fact is that you start to think about this and you go a little bit crazy. You think, wow, what is going on? This is amazing. How do I exist? I'm so grateful to Hashem. I'm so thankful. It just brings tears to your eyes as you think about it. That's the level of Hashem Echad. Alufu Shalom Hainu Bechinas Or Zayin Yamin. This is what's called the light of the 7 days of creation is right here. We don't see it. We don't feel it. We don't understand it. That's why you have to contemplate, because that's what's the truth. This is what it says, that this is the one utterance of God. Kamaimer, like it says, Haloba Maimer Echad Yochali Boros. Couldn't God have created the whole world with one word? In Pirkei Avos we say. Because of the Pardes, it's written in this book called the Pardes. Pardes is the book called written by Rabbi Moshe Cordovero, who was immediately before whatever the Arizal. He's buried right near the Arizal. Because of the Pardes and also the Ramaz, Rabbi Moshe Zechut. Rabbi Moshe Zechut, he wrote a book on the Zohar. Shezehu, that this is Keter, that this is the level of Keter. This one utterance. It says God created the world with 10 utterances. Couldn't have God created the world with one utterance? It says this is to give a reward to the tzaddikim and a punishment to the people who aren't tzaddikim. It says, nevertheless, what is this? He could have created the world with one utterance. What is this one utterance? That's the level of Keter we talked about, the source, the 7 days of creation, the light of the 7 days that's above even the big ayin. Hainu, the Sham, that there in this level of Keter, Hakol b'bichinat achdus is pure unity, pure godliness. Because she is born in Brazil when a person really contemplates this. How it is that the whole entire creation of all of the world, spiritual and physical, the whole thing comes from Yishem, just from a name, Va'ora, and just a ray alone. Namely, it comes from this level of ayin rabasi, this big ayin, which we said is the 7 emotions of God as they are in Atzilut. That this is incomparable. Look in Bina of Atzilut, this is incomparable to their source. The Sham, called the Achdus, the 7 emotions of God, how they are in relation to their source, which said that's the Keter, the 7 days of creation. And this is all just creations. All this stuff is creation. This is nothing compared to God. That's why it's good to learn these Kabbalistic ideas, till you know how amazing they are, and that they're absolutely nothing in relation to Hashem Himself. The angels are the ultimate levels of spirituality, and they're freaking out for God. They're burning up. The Maimer Echa, that this one word that God could have created the whole world with, it's like it says, one thought God could have created the world. He created it with 10 utterances. He could have created it with one thought. The Ita B'Zohar, like it says in the Zohar, the Machshava Achat Nivra Olamot, in one thought, God created all the worlds. In other words, this is what you're supposed to be thinking about when you say Shema Yisrael. The Gam Shorish Umakar Olamos, that even the source that we're talking about, this level of Keter, of all the worlds, It's just one thought of God alone. Think what God's essence is. Think what this is. Where can you find God's essence? The answer is right here in the world. The Jewish people are God's essence, and that is expressed when we're in this physical world. And when we fix ourselves up, we do what God wants. That's God's essence above all these things. But what we have to think about all these things, we have to have awareness of who we're serving. The Gabi Asma says, when you think about this, even your intellectual soul can understand it. How it is that the whole entire creation of the world is just a ray of godliness. That this ray of godliness, even the source of this ray of godliness, this is anaruch, this is like nothing in regard to the essence of God himself. If so, lo yirtze, a person will not want, when you really think about this, what you're really coming from, you won't think lo bebechinas shame, you won't want the name of God, you won't want the ayin of God, you won't want the emotions of God, you won't want this level, ki'im, what do you want? You want the essence of God. Like the Alter Rebbe said, I don't want anything, all I want is you. How can God be? What do you mean? The essence of God, where is that? In this physical world. How we deal with people, how we deal, because who's making all these things in the world happen and all these surprises? This is all Hashem doing it. The biggest revelation of God is what's called hashkacha pratit. And it's everywhere and we don't see it, we don't feel it. When you pray, you sort of make yourself sensitive a little bit. You think, hey, the world is not mine. Let's see what happens. The world is a big surprise. It goes without saying that after you finish praying and thinking about this, you won't be interested in the physical world. It won't interest you. You want money. Who wants? You want success. You want this. But it doesn't. If you don't get it, okay, whatever Hashem wants. Whatever Hashem wants. What says Mashiach comes, everybody's going to have money, everybody's going to have success, everybody's going to have health. So these things are good. When the Mashiach comes, there's going to be all these good things. So these things are good, but they're good because Hashem makes them. You're interested only in Hashem. Let Hashem take care of it. Ella, you're not even interested in the source of the world, spirituality, this level of ayin. And the level of ayin, lo bezot yitzeh. A person won't want, you should know that majority of Judaism, the motivation for religious Jews is going to heaven. That's getting this level of the name of God, the ayin of all will want, as soon as you think about what Shema really means, you'll only think about all I want is the essence of Hashem. Because when you think, contemplate about what we just finished saying, that your intellectual soul, each person according to his nature of his intellect, the chush nefesh and his soul, necessarily it will be yifol al yazem ma'od, it will be your brain will get affected because you're thinking about the truth here. You're thinking about the truth. You're not thinking about who should I vote for, the Democrats or the Republicans, which one is really better, which one is not. We're talking about the truth. Hashem really is creating us, right? He's really creating. This is not a lie. It's not a trick. It's not. This is real reality. When you think about that, then you'll do what says afterwards. You'll come to love God. First of all, your brain will get excited. Then your heart will get excited. Until even your animal soul, you'll get excited about this. And by means of that, when your animal soul gets excited, that's it, right? This is no. Then your godly soul becomes excited. It pushes your godly soul up also. We'll talk about this next time. That's what it means. Yerida tzorech aliyah. That means the descent in this world brings about an elevation. The godly soul itself becomes elevated into a level which is infinite, which we're going to talk about this next time, God willing. This is like what we learned in the last Mimor with Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, that the Tanaim, they wanted to be biruring, refining from this world. That's the whole purpose of the world. That the purpose of, that's why God created the world. That's why Rabbi Shimon gave his godly ideas to them. That's why Rabbi Shimon was affected by what they said, because the lower affects the higher. Remember, we learned that last week. And this is what the Rebbe is talking about. Now that's why we learn Torah Tziva Lana Moshe. It's the whole purpose of the Torah is that a Jew, namely me and you, should come to really love Hashem and bring this love into everything we do in the physical world. and we'll continue, God willing, tomorrow. 2-minute break, and we'll continue. Let's 3-minute break, and we'll continue the Sikha that we started yesterday.
Okay.
3 o'clock, you're doing also?
What you saying?
3 o'clock, you're also doing a shir?
Yeah, 3 o'clock, there will also be a class from 3 to 4. We learn Pirkei Avot.
Yeah, can I